Good afternoon. First of all, can I be heard? Yes. Thank you. As many of you will know, it's a tradition of this university to acknowledge that our campus is situated on Noongar land and that the Noongar people remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of the land and continue to practice their values, languages, beliefs and knowledge. Let me begin by saying welcome to everyone. Thanks for coming along on another warm Perth afternoon, for taking time out of very busy schedules. I know it's particularly busy. There is still examination marking that is underway and a lot of pressures on everyone. I know that you're here to learn more about what our future looks like, where UWA is going, and I'll talk about that in a moment, and I'll say something about the challenges that we face and try to give you some clarity about that future. But I want to begin by talking a little bit about where we've come from in order to understand where we are and where we need to go to. As I'm sure you all know, the university has a rich and proud history, 102 years of achievement. And over those 102 years, people have been taking decisions in this university that have shaped the destiny of the institution. And those have been decisions that have taken the university from being a very small and humble institution in a wood and tin shed in Irwin Street in the city centre, where the university started. That building, of course, as most of you now know, is a cricket pavilion out on the Oval. But it's taken the university from those humble beginnings to being what is now a global university, one of the world's leading universities, and a major player in the Indo-Pacific region, a major player in terms of education and research. It's been the vision and the hard work of the founders of the university and the leaders of the university and the staff of the university over a century that has got us to where we are today. And it is our responsibility to honour that legacy and to build on it to make sure that the university that we hand over to our successors is an even better university than the university we enjoy today. And we will achieve that if each and every one of us applies our energy to that particular mission. And I'm confident that we can do that. But it won't happen by accident. Just as the university, when it was founded, did not develop and grow by accident. It was commitment of those within the university to develop the institution. We're already doing that. This year we began a journey of change in the university, and as I speak today, I have to say I've got a lot of pride in what the university has achieved, particularly over the last 12 months, and everyone has been working very hard and continues to work very hard to gain this achievement. And I'd like to thank everyone here and everyone across the university who isn't here this afternoon for all the hard work that's gone into that. And I want to say your efforts are noticed and they are appreciated because a large institution like this changes and moves forward not because someone has a trigger to pull and the institution changes. It happens because of 1,000 small actions in every part of the university that, added together, move the university on. This year we've taken on a lot. I think we've also delivered a lot. Of course, there could be more, but we've actually delivered a great deal. And it's worth reflecting, I think, a little bit on what we have achieved so far this year. We began by certainly developing the profile and reputation of the university here in Western Australia by starting the year with a very big event when 1.4 million people came into the city centre of Perth to see the Giants. Those massive marionettes brought to Perth through the Perth International Arts Festival, which, as many of you will know, was set up by the university over 60 years ago and is still run by the university for the people of Perth and Western Australia. And that was the first of a number of very successful community engagement events in 2015. We did a lot of work to refresh our brand to meet the needs of a changing market, to refresh our logo, to make it more accessible in the new digital world in which we operate. We moved the focus of our engagement and advertising to talk much less about the university and to talk much more about students and prospective students. And we've encouraged those students to identify their challenges and to go out and pursue their impossible. And here we are in the university ready to help them on whatever journey they choose. Our hard work in the area of research has been recognised and rewarded yet again. We moved up from 88 to 87 in the academic ranking of world universities. We moved up 48 places in the Times Higher ranking of world universities from 157 to 109. And despite what some of you may have read in a completely erroneous report in The Australian about the ERA results, we remain on any sensible evaluation of the ERA results either 7th or 8th in Australia, exactly as we did in the previous ERA round. We've challenged ourselves to think differently when it comes to education, teaching and learning. We've created the Centre for Education Futures, and we've begun to take some major steps towards helping improve the student learning experience, an area where we know we've done quite well but could certainly do better in the future. And we've also begun a journey towards operational excellence. We launched the Sustainable Futures portfolio of projects, and we did that off the back of the functional reviews that we undertook in 2014. And we've made a lot of significant progress on a number of those Sustainable Futures areas, and I think we'll begin to see the benefits of that work flowing through from the early part of next year. I'm sure many of you here have read the paper I circulated a few weeks ago, Securing Success. And so from that, you'll also know that we've made progress, though we have certainly not completed our activities in relation to the 15 proposals for change that I set out in the UWA Futures paper back in September 2012. And I'm not going to go through that detail today, other than to say the progress that we've made again reflects enormously on the commitment and the capability of staff right across the university, because those 15 proposals touched absolutely every part of the university and every member of staff and indeed every student within the university. So let me say again, thank you for your commitment and your dedication to deliver those results. But as we recognise those achievements, we also have to remain focused and not rest on our laurels, and we have to continue to strive to improve everything that we do. And this year has shown that, more so perhaps than any other year, has shown that we have to rely on our own resources to do that rather than expect help from outside. That was made very clear as we watched the deregulation debate stall in the Senate, and as we have seen further reductions in government funding for the higher education sector. Indeed, some were passed through the Senate just last week. On top of that, our new Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, who, by the way, at this very minute is on the other side of the river speaking about innovation, which is why Robin Owens, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research, isn't here because she's representing the university over there. But our new Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, is talking, as we all know, very positively about innovation. But he's also saying to universities, you have a responsibility. You are key agents in the new innovation world in which we now work and live, and more expectations will be placed on universities to respond to this innovation agenda. So this is the context in which we're working. That's where we've come from. This is the context in which we're working. And the Securing Success paper attempted to not only set out that context, but also provide a candid assessment of where we stand. And it was intended to promote the beginning of a conversation right across the campus about how we can respond to the very obvious challenges that we face. Now, these were never going to be comfortable conversations. Actually, I don't think we can afford to allow ourselves to lapse into comfortable conversations when we have really difficult issues to address. But if we're to survive, and indeed we want to do more than survive, we want to thrive as an institution, we have to be prepared to ask some tough questions. We have to be prepared to turn our critical faculties on ourselves and ask the question, are we doing as well as we could be doing? Are we doing as well as others? Are there things that we can learn from others that we could apply here? Are we working at our maximum potential? And we have to be frank in our responses. Because the simple fact is, as I set out in the Securing Success paper, this university faces a very, very, very big budget challenge. We're spending more than we're earning, and we've been doing that for a number of years. We have to confront the reality of UWA's business model, and we have to make some tough choices. You can't run your household budget by consistently spending more than you're earning, and you certainly can't do that in $1 billion a year organisation. So change is not an option, it is absolutely necessary. The only question is exactly what do we do, and how can we make sure that whatever we do will give us the best possible positive results. Let me turn briefly to some of the key facts which I set out in the Securing Success paper. Let me remind you, when it comes to research and research funding, and this university is one of the world's great research universities, and we derive most of our reputation from the fact that we are a global player in research and research excellence. But, as I said in that Securing Success paper, for every dollar of government research funding we receive, we have to find 86 cents from somewhere else to cover the infrastructure and overhead costs. So that means at a time when the university is running an underlying deficit, we have to find $100 million of revenue from somewhere else, and that somewhere else is going to be primarily fees paid by students, in order just to sustain the current level of research activity, let alone grow it. But the challenge is that UWA has the lowest revenue per full-time equivalent student of any of the universities in the group of 8. And that is a consequence of us having a relatively small proportion of international and full-fee domestic postgraduate students, a relatively large proportion of students in higher cost science subjects. This is overwhelmingly a science university in terms of the distribution of student load. And we also, relative to our group of 8 peers, have an over-reliance on undergraduate enrolments. We've not grown our graduate student population as much as our peers. And finally, our recurrent operating costs are simply far too high, particularly our staffing costs. We spend 63% of our revenue on salaries. The average for the group of 8 is around 56%. So we are a very high cost, low revenue per student university. Those two things together create the budget problem that we have to address. A big problem, but far from insurmountable. And of course, as an institution built on knowledge and ideas and thinking outside the box, clearly, between us, if we all pool our collective effort, energy, and thoughts together, clearly we have the capability within the university to address these issues and to set the institution on a positive path for the future. We need to do that in order to make sure we leave our legacy for future generations of students and future generations of staff in the university. Now, in order to begin the conversation across campus, in order to stimulate some discussion, I posed 5 challenges, really, in the Securing Success paper. I asked 5 things. How can we drive revenue by recruiting more students, and particularly international students. And how can we do this in an increasingly competitive market? It's a much harder thing to do today than it was 10 years ago, but we have to rise to that challenge. Secondly, how can we improve our processes, our space utilization, and the professional to academic staff ratio to address the excessively high cost base and the unsustainably high cost base of the university? Thirdly, how can we transfer our efforts from low-value administrative work to high-impact service so that we can become a leader in student satisfaction in the Australian higher education sector? That's what we aspire to. We're not there yet. Fourth, how can we promote ourselves internationally and grow our reputation so that we become even better known and so that we become one of the best known universities in Australia and one of the leaders in the group of 8? And how can we do that just in the next 4 or 5 years? And finally, fifthly, how can we implement a workforce planning framework and a process that ensures that essential knowledge is passed on while we provide an appropriate balance of early career and senior staff within the university? Again, you will recall from the Securing Success paper that the average full employment cost of a full-time academic member of staff in this university is 27% higher than it is at the University of Melbourne and 14% higher than it is at the University of Queensland. Now, as I said before, these challenges are significant, but by no means insurmountable. And in addition to the feedback that many of you have sent me in relation to the Securing Success paper, I've spent the last couple of months going around the university. I've tried to visit every faculty and division to listen to your ideas, hear your concerns. One thing that's been very clear to me from those forums and from the feedback is how much everyone in the university, how much every member of staff cares about this institution. And that's really inspiring, because when people care about something, they will put the effort in to make sure it's successful. And I know that's what everyone here does on a daily basis for this university. But as I was going around the university, you also shared a concern. This was repeated time and time again. It's concern about the constancy of change at UWA. A lot of people said, there's a lot of change going on. It's been going on for several years. When is it going to stop? Now, I understand change is disconcerting, it's confronting, it's challenging, and we have to make sure it doesn't overwhelm us. However, it is not going to stop, because the world in which we live now is a world of constant change. Constant change coming from government, coming from the market, coming from competitor institutions, constant change coming from the expectations of students and alumni and business partners, and so on. Change is part of the world in which we live. We have to face the challenge of change, and we need to embrace change rather than resile from it, and turn change into opportunity for ourselves and the university. If we don't do that, clearly we will fail, because institutions, organisations that change less rapidly than the environment around them go backwards and ultimately disappear. We have seen a lot of change over the last 2 years, and we've seen change which has been preparing the way for the functional reviews that took place in 2014, and we've also then, from those functional reviews, taken the first tentative steps towards new ways of working in the university. But we can't continue to be tentative, because the pace of change and the expectations outside the university are ratcheting up all the time. If we continue to be tentative, if we continue to be slow, and being slow for the sake of slowness is not good, being tentative when we could be more direct is not a good thing to be in an environment where the external world is changing. So we have to be prepared to be much bolder. To use one of the Prime Minister's favourite words of the moment, we have to be more agile. And we have to be prepared to take calculated risks. And each of us have to take ownership of the solutions that we are proposing. And let me put my hand up, that responsibility starts with me. And it's shared with members of the executive and senior managers right across the university. We all have to step up and take a leadership role and take the responsibility of that role. And every member of the university has an active role to play as we take change through the university. Now, in saying every member of the university, do I actually mean every member of the university? Yes, I do. Some of you will be familiar with that story about President Kennedy in 1962 when he was visiting the NASA space station. And he went up to a guy who was a janitor, and he said, "Hi, I'm Jack Kennedy. What do you do here at NASA?" And the janitor said, "Well, Mr. President, I'm helping to put a man on the moon." Okay, and that's the sort of commitment that in the end did put a man on the moon. But it's that sense that everyone, no matter what their job is here in the university, has a role to play in taking the university forward, taking us up to the next level. So I suppose one of the questions one of the thoughts I'd like everyone to take away from this meeting today, despite whatever other thoughts you take away, it would be to ask yourself, how can I be part of this process? How can I help? And how can I work with my work group, with my workmates, to determine how we can all, both individually and collectively, play a role in changing the university for the better? What are the sorts of things that you could do? Well, I mentioned before about moving from low value-added back office to high value-added frontline service. And we're probably all aware that we have some complex, often many people would say unnecessarily complex, somewhat old-fashioned processes in the university. Let me say, one of the things that we could all do is look at those processes. Let's try to change them. And, in trying to change them, you may not be successful, but those changes, those are some of the 1,000 small things that need to be done right across the university. Not directed from my office, not an instruction that trickles down, but actually something that people can say, okay, we're doing it this way, can we do it a different way? Let's try to generate those 1,000 good ideas so that we can begin the change process. And if we fail on some of them, that's fine. If we fail on 100 of the 1,000 good ideas, that doesn't matter if we implement 900. Now, that's what we all need to do, but there are some bigger changes that we also have to drive through. And at an institutional level, and at the request of the university's finance committee, the strategic resources committee, and the university senate, I was asked to develop with my executive colleagues and with the planning and resources committee several options to address the fundamental financial challenge of the university, and to address it not just for 1 year or 2 years, but to undertake a fundamental repositioning of the university so that we have a stable and sustainable financial future for the foreseeable future. And on Monday night of this week, change microphone since this one is unreliable. Monday night of this week, the University Senate endorsed a set of proposals that will have a profound impact on the university. The first of these will address the high cost base of the university. As I mentioned before, our staffing levels are much higher than is the average of the Group of 8, in fact higher than any of the Group of 8 research-intensive universities. So in early 2016, UWA will be pursuing a round of redundancies of 300 positions. These will be 200 professional positions and 100 academic positions. And I can assure you this is not news I deliver lightly or blithely, and particularly not in the lead up to the festive break. But it is a necessary action. If we do not address the cost base, we cannot transform the financial position of this university. And if we can't transform the financial position of the university, we will go backwards, and we will go backwards quite rapidly. Clearly, there is never a good time to share news like this, but I've given a commitment to be as transparent and as open as I possibly can be. I've not been able to talk about this prior to the decision by the University Senate on Monday night, and let me say I will continue to provide as much information as I can about this process as we navigate our way through it. Let me be clear, this is a decision which is not the result of anything that anyone has done or not done. It's about the structure of the university and the cost base of the university. And it's a decision that has been taken in the acknowledgement that we have to address that cost base. It's also a decision taken in recognition that the staff of the university are the university's greatest asset. In fact, the staff of the university are the university's only truly productive asset. The rest of the assets, bricks and mortar, just sit here. They can only be activated, and the research facilities and so on, can only be activated by staff. And because staff are the greatest asset and the only really creative asset of the university, we will need to judge the success of the implementation of this reduction in staffing as much in terms of the respect and understanding we show staff throughout this process as in terms of the realised cost savings. That is going to be fundamental. I can't today confirm the exact roles that will be affected, and this is detail that will be developed over the weeks ahead. What I can say is that in terms of the professional roles that we're looking at, that will be done in conjunction with the distribution of services across the university. And at the same time as looking at those professional roles, we are also going to be looking at the academic structure of the university. It's clear from the recent review of undergraduate courses that was conducted 3 years ago of our course structure, that our current faculty structure is not serving us well. The review highlighted the disjuncture between our faculty structure, where we have 8 faculties, and the School of Indigenous Studies, so 9 organisational units of very varying size, servicing 4 undergraduate degrees that currently account for over 3/4 of the students in this university, but with no direct relationship between those undergraduate degrees and that 9-unit organisational structure. Now, we haven't yet developed a proposal around that academic structure, but it is my intention that a revised academic structure will be designed and approved in 2016 and implemented on the 1st of January 2017. When it comes to looking at the 100 academic roles that we will be losing, we will be looking at performance and output levels over the last 6 years. So the identification of the roles affected will be informed by the Uniforum staffing data, the benchmark comparative staffing data that we have looking across many universities, including all of the group of 8. It will also be looking at the ERA data and the returns we submitted to ERA, along with the outputs of the functional reviews that were undertaken at the end of 2014 and that have been further worked on through this year. I will be providing a proposal on the 2nd of February, which will contain full details together with the details of implementation of these changes that will begin and commence in March 2016. At the same time as we will be stopping 100 academic roles, that will be partially offset by 50 new academic roles that will be created in areas where we currently have or are looking to secure some very real comparative advantage. And this academic renewal is the second initiative that we will be pursuing in 2016. We're currently working to determine the areas where we will be undertaking this development and academic renewal, and detail of these additional roles will also be included in the information that I will be giving out in February. The final initiative that I want to talk about today will be the adoption of a revised academic calendar. And I mentioned this subject in the Securing Success paper, and I said, ideas included a short summer semester or a move to a full 3-semester year. Now, how we take those options forward has yet to be decided, but we will move forward on them, and that modernisation of the academic calendar is essential. Currently, as most of you will know, the majority, by no means all, but the majority of our teaching takes place over 2 13-week semesters. That means for half the year, our teaching spaces, libraries, laboratories, coffee shops, and the like are significantly underutilised and in some cases not used at all. And as universities across the country are being pushed by government to demonstrate that they are efficient and effective and are using public resources in the most creative way, it's clear that we're going to have to listen to that pressure from government, and we're going to have to respond. And we need to do that because many other universities, in fact most other universities, are ahead of us in this. Most of them have already taken steps to improve the utilisation of the campus infrastructure. We have over $2 billion worth of assets sitting here on campus, and those assets are underutilised for half the year. And given that government still provides the majority of our funding, we have to be responsive to indicators that come out of government. Government is saying to everyone across the economy, we want you to be innovative, but government is saying to universities and the higher education sector in particular, don't just talk about innovation and innovation that you're undertaking with startup companies and commercial organisations outside of the university. Try to show that you are innovative within the university. So that's something that we will have to focus on. Now you'll notice in terms of the 5 challenges that I set out earlier, these 3 initiatives focus very heavily on costs and staff renewal. And we're focusing very heavily on those areas because they're key enablers to unlocking the future potential of the university. Lowering the cost base, utilising our resources and particularly space more effectively, begin to address the underlying deficit, and in time will provide us with the resources that we need to improve our facilities, our infrastructure, our IT, to reinvest in core business, to make new academic appointments, to better support our students, and to enhance teaching and learning and community engagement. All those things are necessary. In the Securing Success paper, I set out how we need to generate that underlying surplus to create the future fund within the university that will allow us to do all those things to secure success. So refocusing academic effort to areas of comparative advantage, that's what we'll be doing with these 50 new academic appointments, will be an important aspect of staff renewal, academic staff renewal, though of course that happens on a continuing basis as staff leave the university and new staff are hired. But we will need to give renewed attention to ensuring that every new academic position is bringing someone of very great value to the university and that they contribute to our areas of excellence and strength, whether that be in teaching or research or industry engagement and impact. There is, of course, significant work being undertaken to tackle our other challenges, the challenges of revenue, of service and of reputation. We're doing a lot of work around service culture, and many of you were in the Octagon just a few days ago when Dawn presented on the service charter and the development of the service charter across the university. We're doing work around providing a better digital platform for our students. These are some of the many projects underway under the Sustainable Futures group of projects. And of course, we're doing a lot with international students, developing articulation arrangements, in particular with universities outside of Australia. And that will increase the flow of international students and will begin to bring us up towards the proportion of international students that is now the norm across Australian universities, which is around 25%. We're currently in 2014, our 2014 data had us at 17.4% international students on this campus. These other initiatives are crucial for us. Add all these things together and they will help the university to reposition. They will help us build a better future. What is that future that we seek to build? Well, I think it's a future where, rather than being the University of Western Australia that is focused primarily on Western Australia, it will enable us to create a university where young scholars across Australia and the world say, I want to go to UWA to study. I want to go there because of the world-class teaching, because of a curriculum that's at the cutting edge, because of the brilliant researchers who will support me in my studies, whether at undergraduate, graduate, or PhD level. I want a university where the ideas and the products and the knowledge of our postgraduate and research students inspire them to be the people who go out and change the world, whether they do that through traditional career structures or startups or engage in creating new social enterprises, but by creating those active citizens through UWA, we can begin to change the world. I want all our graduates to leave this university as academically and culturally assured global citizens. And that still, I think, is a big challenge for all Australian universities, and particularly for the university here in Western Australia. We need to think globally, we need to act globally, and we need to prepare our graduates for the world, the globalised employment world in which they will be making their futures over years and decades to come. And if we can do all those things, then we will know we've truly delivered on our core purpose as a university. It will only happen if we make it happen. If we sit back, none of this will happen. So we cannot afford to be passive. We can't run the risk of allowing our future to disappear before our eyes. So by making hard decisions today, I think we will undoubtedly be building the foundations for a much better future for tomorrow. How do we progress around this? If I can get this to work. And I can't get it to work. Okay. So, the renewal project team. The three initiatives that I've spoken about in terms of redundancies, in terms of academic renewal appointments and the academic calendar, ultimately will be managed by a renewal project team, and particularly the staffing elements of this. The executive sponsor of the team, as it says here, is Professor Dawn Freshwater, Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor. The project team will have representation through a review, each faculty and functional unit will have representation in this project team through a review process. There will be panels and a lot of opportunities for feedback and consultation through forums and discussion boards and so on. The timeline is as set out here. This project team will be meeting with staff from across the campus over coming weeks to develop the full proposal That full proposal will be presented to staff in an open forum on the 2nd of February. Staff will then have an opportunity to submit feedback before final decision and implementation process is presented to staff on the 22nd of February. There will be a schedule of engagement opportunities which we will put out before the Christmas break, and implementation of these changes will begin in early March with the aim of completion by the end of 2016. Now, it's quite likely that some aspects of the organisational change will flow on into 2017, but it is anticipated that staff redundancies will commence from the middle of 2016. If you have any questions of feedback that you'd like to submit on these initiatives and what I've been talking about, there is a dedicated email address, renewal-feedback, and we will look at all those responses, all those comments, and endeavour to respond to them. If you want advice or information about your own personal situation, there's a second dedicated email, as up here, renewal-HR, which has been set up for that purpose. That's for personal enquiries. It's confidential, and you can ask any things you like. That may perhaps be more likely in the early part of next year, once more information has come out than now. But if you want to get information now, you're more than welcome, and that email address is already being monitored. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for your patience. I'm now going to throw the floor open, and I'd welcome any of your questions or comments, and I and the rest of the leadership team are here to address them. Thank you.